Hey, good morning, everybody. Brendan here, of course. Just when you think it's about to be springtime, all this cold, and you can see the snow behind me, all this coldness happens. It is, however, still beautiful out here at 8 a.m. I should say 8 a.m. because is it morning? Is it evening? You don't know from this shot. Anyway, I wanted to talk about something, as usual, that came up last night, actually. I was in a conversation with a friend of mine on Facebook, and she sent me this article that I'm going to link to in the show notes. It's from this blog called Reign of Kings. And I had seen this article some time ago on Reddit, and it was basically an article talking about why girls who have tattoos and ear piercings are sluts. And I, of course, like you, immediately are like, that's ridiculous. That's totally stupid. What could possibly the evidence be for that? And you're right, there's none. It's a guy ranting, and he's a total dick. I almost didn't want to mention the name of the blog or article because I don't think he needs any more attention. But I do think it's good to publicly shame people a little bit when they do something like this. Not horribly. I think we should forgive people for their mistakes. That if this dude ended up turning around and realizing the error of his ways and beliefs, I think there should be a space for that. But there should first be a space for pointing out how big of an idiot he is. However, the point of this video isn't to do the public whipping. The point of this video is that while I was talking to my friend, she was very confused. She was like, why would it somebody, like, I don't understand where this anger comes from that this guy would post. Like, he clearly has a lot of anger at women, and we kind of generally started talking about misogyny and where this stuff comes from. I wanted to talk about that for a second because I think that there is something I can add to this discussion. I think that we can get some insight into it where this type of misogyny comes from if we look at the state of American masculinity. That I think that men are caught in a strange type of double bind too that isn't discussed in women's studies classes. It's relevant because I think a lot of anger and potentially male against female violence comes from this place. And that's that as a man, you are expected to conquer women. You're expected to own them. You're expected to be in a powerful position all the time. And of course we know that's from every commercial that we see on television in which the housewife is actually the correct one. That's totally ridiculous, obviously. Nobody, man or woman, nobody can be in a powerful position all the time versus another person. It doesn't make any sense. Yet guys like this guy who were writing this article are caught in a strange kind of psychological position in which they feel like they should be the one in power and they're not. That is, that the desire they have for a relationship or affection from a woman is caught versus the place that they don't have the ability to create it themselves in their life. Either they don't have the skills or they just simply don't have the emotional skills. Because it's another thing, a lot of people don't teach men emotional skills to create the kind of relationships. Holy shit, I'm gonna like fall down on this ice. Winter be treacherous, y'all. Anyway, somehow they don't have the ability to create these relationships in their own life. At least they see that level of powerlessness. Whether or not they have it, they don't see that they have it. I want to be really clear in this video. I don't want to be a douchebag apologist. I'm not trying to make this to forgive these people or to point out that they're the real victims here. That's absolutely not what's going on. What I'm trying to do is to explain their behavior so I think that we understand it a little more. We're not confused when we see it. Not that it excuses it. Explaining isn't excusing, but maybe that we're not so mystified by it. So, okay, I hear you saying, and rightfully so. So, Brendan, how does that even, it doesn't make any sense still. Why attack the object that they feel they're powerless toward? Well, I think we can take a look at the world of political cartoons, believe it or not, to get some insight here. We have a history of hundreds of years of political cartoons that do one thing over and over and over again. I mean, they do other things too, but they typically depict people in positions of power in a ridiculous way. They portray the image of those people in such a way that it robs their image of a sense of dignity or power, or it outright abuses the image. It's trying to tell the people who are reading, this person is not so powerful, are they? Of course, you know, the difference in this scenario is that whereas political figures do have a lot of real power in the world to affect and change things and are also only one person, women are vulnerable, potentially, to men they don't know. The differences are there and you can see them. And so this becomes a real problem, of course, especially when there are guys online writing articles that seem to encourage the anger and direct it at women with tattoos. Like, what's that dude's... I mean, seriously, that's stupid. So another good question to ask here, I think, is why is this guy this angry? Why would he even be mad at this situation. I mean, sexual frustration aside, which I'm sure everybody's experienced at one point or another, but it's not enough to have somebody go write a blog about how much they hate women. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. And you're right, it is. I think he's angry because his anger occurs at his level of identity. Meaning that he is male, he knows that because he's got a wiener, probably. He's got a body of a man, he's attracted to women, he knows these things. Culturally, that tells him he's male and he's a man. However, the fact that he knows he's male runs up against a second problem, which is that socially, gender, as feminists have correctly stated, is socially defined. And he's looking for a social definition to understand his own identity. I think we all are. It's something that is never talked about. But the fact that we look for a social identity, we are in a certain way objects to ourselves, and we're observing our own evidence. Surprise, I'm back inside. Pretty much as soon as I turned around and started walking into the wind, it just got way too cold to do anything. So I want to finish up this video though, because the point that I was building to is pretty simple, but it's pretty also complicated, which is that gender, as we know, is socially defined. And there's, of course, a challenge in this because we live in a world today in which the concept of masculinity and what it means to be a man is so arbitrarily and loosely defined that it's left to the mass media, it's left to these kinds of sources to tell men what they're supposed to be. When you do that, you're left with some pretty generic definitions like, oh, you get a lot of chicks, you bang a lot of women, you make a lot of money, you're super powerful, you're all of these things. And when men see themselves not being in those places, when they identify, I don't make a lot of money, I don't bang a lot of chicks, I don't, have a lot of power, then what am I? Well, the easiest target to go after is, I think, women, because there's half of us. Agree, disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is obviously a conversation. I don't know that I'm right, but leave a comment below and hit that subscribe button. I want to keep this conversation going.